We did it, folks. We did it. Yes, give yourselves a round of applause. ESPN has finally understood that they can't dance around this anymore. Just hold the L with 2024 and then just compare it to accept your L and then go and say all the positive things that you want to say after. No shame in that.
ESPN finally admitted what they've been hiding all season. After months of selective reporting, cherry-picked stats, and mysteriously delayed data drops, the network has come clean, and it's not pretty. The official WNBA Finals ratings are out. And let's just say they didn't just expose a weak postseason. They exposed an entire media narrative collapsing in real time.
Finally, ESPN has decided that the year 2024 actually did exist. So often this season, whether it was the draft, All-Star game, so often they were comparing this year's numbers to 2023's numbers. Oh my gosh, but it's up if you compare it to 2 years ago. Well, it's down if you compare it to last year. A constant back and forth that we had with ESPN all season long.
Here's why this matters. Nielsen upgraded their tracking system this year. They added every possible advantage. Smart TVs, set-top boxes, even out-of-home viewing in bars and hotels. All of it designed to capture more viewers. So, this year's numbers should have looked historic. But even with the deck stacked, the 2025 finals couldn't beat 2024. Not even close. And that's when the spin machine kicked into overdrive. All season long, ESPN played games with the numbers. They'd brag about growth by comparing this year to 2023, conveniently skipping over Caitlin Clark's record-breaking 2024 season. They'd release ratings for Game 1, but go silent on Game 2. They'd post NBA TV viewership, but quietly hide ABC's lower numbers. It was a shell game, and anyone paying attention could see it. But now the finals are over. The excuses ran out. ESPN can't hide behind half-truths anymore. Do you think ESPN will finally embrace Caitlin Clark, or is this just another media spin? Let us know down in the comments.
Last year, they put it all out. This year, very selective on the certain numbers that they made available to the public. We have to wait for ESPN to report it now. We have to wait for these networks to report it now. They don't give it to sports media anymore. They don't give it to TV ratings guy. They don't give it to any of these other programs anymore. Now they just gonna keep it close to the vest, sit behind the scenes, fluff up their numbers as much as they can, and then finally release something.
Think about what that means. The so-called worldwide leader in sports has turned into a PR arm for the league, sitting in closed-door meetings, massaging their own ratings before releasing them to the public. No independent verification, no raw data from analysts, just ESPN in a boardroom trying to spin a 5% increase that only exists because they changed the way they count. And here's the kicker. That 5% bump is actually a massive failure when you look under the hood. Last year's postseason was tracked under the old system. This year's included millions of new devices, bar TVs, hotel streams, viewers that weren't even measured before. So, if you adjusted for the new system, the finals didn't grow. They collapsed. The audience shrank by at least 20%. But ESPN can technically say, hey, it's up 5%, because they literally rewrote the math.
2025 WNBA Finals averaged 1.5 million viewers, second most watch on ESPN, behind only 2024. Oh, yeah. Finals are down this year. How does that look, WNBA? How does that look? Think about it, folks. How does that look? They are already trending downwards. When it comes to finals that aren't involving Caitlin Clark, the numbers are already pointing downwards. And it was a sweep. Oh, goodness. But in the WNBA's case, but guys, you had Asia Wilson.
That's how desperate they are to cover for a simple truth. The league has fallen apart without Caitlin Clark. The frustration's boiling over now because everyone sees what happened. The WNBA just ran the most expensive natural experiment in sports history, and the data doesn't lie. This season had everything the league claimed fans wanted. Parity, stars, competition. Asia Wilson, the reigning MVP, Dana Bonner, one of the most decorated veterans alive. The Las Vegas Aces chasing a dynasty. ESPN hyped it as proof that the league was more than one player. But when the lights came on, nobody cared. Game 1 opened strong with 9 million viewers. Not bad, but then reality hit. Game 2 dropped to 2 million. Game 3 barely climbed to 3. The closeout Game 4 finished with 44 million. Those aren't championship numbers. That's audience fatigue. Fans tuned in once, realized Clark wasn't there, and checked out.
You see? That's actual growth, even with the new metric system, even with the new counting system that Nielsen has implemented. 5%, not real growth. 30%, okay, I could say, okay, that's some growth right there. Because if you compare that to last year, it's still probably an increase. But if you compare the postseason using last year's ratings metrics, that's down. But we move on. Let's take a look. We have Game 1 of the 2025 finals giving you 1.9 million viewers. You have Game 2, Game 3 giving you 1.2 and 1.3, down from last year.
Compare that to last year, the 2024 finals. Clark's rookie year was the complete opposite. The series gained viewers every game. Game 1 started with 1 million. Game 2, 34. Game 3, 4. Game 4, 7. Game 5, a stunning 2 million viewers. That's not hype. That's growth in real time. People told their friends. Casual fans became loyal watchers. The series turned into a cultural event. That's what happens when Caitlin Clark is involved. She's a gravitational force. She doesn't just bring basketball fans. She brings everyone. But the second she's gone, so are they. Those percentage jumps tell the full story. The 2024 finals didn't just improve, they exploded. Game 1 viewership jumped 57% from the year before. Game 2 doubled. Game 3 and 4 were up more than 100%. Game 5 soared 142%. That's not a trend, that's a revolution. One player drove the kind of growth the WNBA had been chasing for 20 years.
That is what the Caitlin Clark effect looks like. I gotta be honest. That's what a lot of new eyeballs looks like. Gotta be honest. Peaked at 3.3 million. So we can all sit here and agree that at the bare minimum, 1 million people that saw a piece of last year's finals didn't see a single piece of this year's finals. Can we agree on that? Cool. Great. Crazy work.
And this year, the finals averaged just 5 million viewers. Last year, 6 million without all those artificial neon boosts. Adjust for the same system, and you're looking at a 20 to 25% drop. That's roughly 1 million people who watched last year's playoffs and said, nah, I'm good this time around. These aren't people who didn't know it was on. ESPN marketed the finals relentlessly. They just weren't interested in a product, missing the one person who made it worth watching. It's a brutal truth, but it's undeniable. Fans don't tune in for balance or team parity. They tune in for Caitlin Clark. She's a storyline. She's a reason record sponsors showed up. She's why casual sports fans suddenly cared about women's basketball. The WNBA can preach about depth and diversity all they want, but the remotes don't lie. Even Sports Media Watch dropped the hammer, warning everyone that the 5% increase is meaningless because the 2025 data is juiced with new metrics. It's like comparing a video shot in 4K to one in standard definition and saying, see brighter colors. The truth is, ESPN and the WNBA spent all season trying to prove Clark wasn't the reason for their success. And the finals just proved the exact opposite.
Going from the maximum number of games last year to the minimum this year, the WNBA Finals was unsurprisingly less of a draw. I think it's the WNBA fatigue, which is why it was less of a draw, if we got to be honest. The 4-game Aces Mercury WNBA Finals averaged 1.5 million viewers across ESPN and ABC, trailing only last year's 5-game Liberty Link series at 1.6 million as the most watched final since 2000. The WNBA expanded from best of 5 to best of 7 this year. Keep in mind that Nielsen has this year expanded its out-of-home viewing sample to cover 100% of markets and switched to a new methodology that adds data from set-top boxes and smart TVs to its pre-existing panel.
They wanted to show the hype was sustainable, that new fans had fallen in love with the league itself. Instead, they exposed that those fans fell in love with her. This wasn't a gentle decline. It was a nosedive. The audience didn't drift away slowly. They left immediately. Game 1 curiosity turned into Game 2 apathy. The newcomers who discovered the WNBA last year weren't loyal to the logo. They were loyal to Caitlin Clark. And that's what ESPN, Kathy Engelbert, and Asia Wilson don't want to admit. They tried to sell a story that the league was thriving beyond Clark. They mocked the idea that one player could define an entire sport. But the numbers tell a different story. The second Clark was gone, the audience vanished. Now the WNBA is facing a terrifying question. If your MVP, your super team, and your national TV deal can't keep fans watching, what happens when Caitlin Clark leaves permanently? Because right now, the only person keeping the lights on isn't even playing. That comparison is beyond brutal. It's like Barry Bonds' use of the gills and still hitting fewer home runs than a clean Aaron Judge. That's the WNBA's 2025 Finals in a nutshell. With every advantage imaginable, expanded Nielsen tracking, smart TV data, set-top box reporting, and full national coverage, they still couldn't outdraw Caitlin Clark's 2024 numbers. And that's where the story starts unraveling for ESPN.
Built-in advantage over prior years. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. You're telling me this year is on steroids and still getting beaten?
Because here's the financial nightmare. ESPN just dropped a massive new media rights deal on the WNBA, betting big that last year's explosion was only the beginning. Their entire investment thesis hinged on the idea that 2024 wasn't a one-off. It was the new normal. They projected steady compounding growth from Clark's breakout year. But these finals shattered that illusion. What ESPN thought was a baseline turned out to be a ceiling. Media rights deals are built on future growth curves, not nostalgia. When ESPN signed a check, they expected 2024's momentum to carry into the next decade. They modeled finals games, eventually pulling 3 to 4 million viewers as the league matured. But what they actually got was a cliff dive, a double-digit drop, even with all those inflated measurement upgrades. If you're an ESPN executive staring at those charts, you're not sipping champagne. You're stressed drinking coffee. You just paid a premium for what now looks like a bubble. The numbers don't show momentum. They show contraction. And the most alarming detail, at least 500,000 viewers who tuned in for Game 1 looked at what they saw and decided they were done.
Last Friday's clinching Game 4 averaged 1.4 million on ESPN, down from the 1.7 last year, but surpassing all other Game 4s since the finals expanded beyond a best-of-3 format. After opening with 1.9 million viewers, they failed to get that back. After opening up with 1.9, they have failed to get anywhere near that back. 500,000 people minimum said, I'm good on this. I don't need to watch Game 2, Game 3, or Game 4. I'm good. And they didn't turn on.
That's not indifference. That's rejection. Those weren't trolls or anti-fans. Those were curious newcomers, the very audience ESPN and the WNBA brag about capturing. They gave the finals a shot, realized Clark wasn't there, and walked away. In business terms, that's a product test, and the product failed. You can make excuses when fans don't show up at all. You can blame poor marketing or bad scheduling. But when they show up, sample product, and then leave halfway through, that's a verdict, and 500,000 people just handed the league its report card. Now zoom out The WNBA wrote a record, setting regular season in 2024, mostly thanks to Caitlin Clark's presence. That momentum was supposed to snowball into this year. Instead, the cracks started showing even before the finals. Non-Clark games last season were already struggling to fill seats. The league tried to downplay it. The finals were supposed to prove that the league could stand on its own. Asia Wilson, Dana Bonner, all the big names ready to carry the torch. But the numbers told the opposite story.
How does that look? They are already trending downwards. When it comes to finals that aren't involving Caitlin Clark, the numbers are already pointing downwards. And it was a sweep. Oh, goodness. But in the WNBA's case, well, guys, you had Asia Wilson.
The casual audience that discovered women's basketball through Clark never transferred that loyalty. They weren't watching the league, they were watching her. And when she wasn't there, their interest evaporated. Then you read between the lines of what sports media Watch quietly wrote. Viewership figures will tend to have a built-in advantage over prior years. Translation: don't let these numbers fool you. They're worse than they look. That's as close as you'll get to a polite obituary from a media ratings outlet. They're signaling that these finals didn't just underperform. They flopped. They just can't say it out loud because ESPN and the WNBA are both clients. Here's why that soft-pled warning matters. The entire WNBA growth story depends on maintaining the illusion of an upward slope. Sponsors, advertisers, and investors don't fund stability. They fund acceleration. A single down year can be spun as a fluke. But 2 consecutive years trending downward, that's a panic signal. Now, imagine what happens if 2026 repeats this pattern. If Clark's team misses the finals again, and the audience drops even further. Sponsors who paid top dollar for record-breaking exposure are going to feel duped. Those contracts were negotiated based on the Caitlin Clark boom. If they realize they overpaid for empty seats and soft ratings, they'll cut their budgets fast. You don't renew multi-million-dollar ad deals for declining inventory.
After opening with 1.9 million viewers, they failed to get that back. After opening up with 1.9, they have failed to get anywhere near that back. 500,000 people minimum said, I'm good on this. I don't need to watch Game 2, Game 3, or Game 4.
The same applies to ESPN. They can stomach one bad postseason, but not a trend. If they see that Clarkless games consistently underperform, even during the finals, they're sitting on a ticking time bomb. They can't justify paying top rates for a league that depends entirely on one player's participation. And worse, they can't control that variable. The league and its commissioner, Kathy Angelberg, keep insisting that growth came from broader initiatives, better marketing, more visibility, competitive parity. But the 2025 finals ran the perfect experiment. All the league's talking points were tested under ideal conditions. Primetime games, huge promotional budgets, even artificially inflated Nielsen coverage. Yet, without Clark, the numbers fell off a cliff. The conclusion writes itself, and that's what makes this an existential crisis. If your league only thrives when one player is present, you're not building a business. You're renting a moment. What happens when she gets injured or when she takes a break, or worse, when she retires? The WNBA has tethered its future to the unpredictability of one athlete schedule. That's not sustainable. That's desperate. There's also a deeper fatigue issue here, a kind of trust burnout with casual fans. Caitlin Clark pulled in millions of new viewers in 2024 who genuinely wanted to believe. They weren't lifelong skeptics. They were curious newcomers. But what they saw over the season turned them off. They saw a league that treated its biggest star like an inconvenience instead of an opportunity. They watched her get shoved, tripped, and targeted game after game while refs swallowed whistles. They saw veterans mock her after losses instead of respecting her. They watched Engelberg and ESPN look the other way. And then they heard players and analysts suggest that Clark's success was somehow a problem for the league. That hypocrisy was impossible to ignore. So when those same fans saw finals without Clark, they didn't just lose interest. They made a statement. Why support a league that refuses to protect or even appreciate the player who brought them there in the first place? That's the question echoing across social media, and the ratings answer it clearly. This is where the WNBA's public relations strategy backfired spectacularly. For months, they tried to prove they didn't need Caitlin Clark. They promoted A'ja Wilson as a true face of the league, emphasized balance and parity, and acted like Clark's absence from the finals was actually healthy for the brand. They wanted to prove the WNBA wasn't a one-woman show. Instead, they accidentally proved that without her, no one's watching the show at all. The audience's verdict couldn't be louder. They didn't tune in to celebrate depth. They tuned out because the league pushed away the one reason they cared. Now, the WNBA is trapped in a corner. They can't admit Clark is the sole driver of interest because that undermines their entire narrative. But they can't ignore it either because every ratings release exposes it. And then there's that final dagger, the closeout game's viewership. Only one. For million tuned in to watch a champion crowned. In every major sport, the last game is a peak. That's when casuals check in. When new viewers tune in for the celebration. When the audience swells because it's the finale. Instead, the WNBA's championship game actually lost viewers compared to one before it. And compared to last year's equivalent matchup, it collapsed by over a third. That's catastrophic. You can't spin that into good news. You can't blame bad timing, competing sports, or summer schedules. The simplest explanation is the truest one. People didn't care. Even more painful, this wasn't a weak matchup. It featured A'ja Wilson, the reigning MVP, the player the league's been marketing as its pillar of excellence. She's dominant, charismatic, and in her prime, but her closeout game still drew 800,000 fewer viewers than Clark's. That's not an insult to A'ja. It's reality. The market has spoken, and the market says Caitlin Clark is women's basketball's box office. The league can plaster Wilson on every billboard, give her every award, and flood ESPN segments with glowing features. But it won't move a needle. The viewership proves it. Fans don't respond to the PR machine. They respond to genuine star power, and ESPN knows it. The network has quietly started a pivot. They're done pretending every season can be compared selectively to 2023. They've accepted that 2024 exists as a permanent benchmark, and that benchmark belongs to Clark. Every future year will be measured against her impact, and that's the brutal truth haunting the league right now. 2024 wasn't normal growth. It was lightning in a bottle powered by one transcendent athlete. ESPN and Kathy Engelberg tried to rebrand that miracle as momentum, but the numbers expose the illusion. The WNBA isn't collapsing because it lacks talent. It's collapsing because it refuses to acknowledge who built the bridge between women's basketball and mainstream America. Until they accept that Caitlin Clark is a cornerstone, not a distraction, the league will keep losing fans, sponsors, and credibility. Do you think ESPN will finally embrace Caitlin Clark? Or is this just another media spin? Let us know down in the comments. Like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next.